Well, welcome to another episode of Rim Shots with Sean, right here on the Rock Rage Radio Network, brought to you by Barstools and Bandtalk, the hat edition. I got my brand new Kiss hat, so I decided to wear it tonight with my new friend Mark McKowen from Divine Martyr. Another hookup through my friend Christina down in Connecticut. And Mark, you are out of where, sir?
All right, could you say that again? I'm sorry, my audio just cut out. Of course,
No,
that would
that's fine.
happen live.
No, we're not live. We're recording, so it's all good. You're based out of where?
No, we're based out of Indianapolis, the Indy metro area. So Indiana, Midwest, about 2 hours south of Chicago.
Been
So
to
how's that?
Indianapolis a bunch of times. Great. It's a great town and
Yeah,
great people there. So Christina sent me your band info. I'm gonna say you guys are kind of prog, but I don't know if you guys consider yourselves in that vein. Why don't you describe to my viewers and listeners just a little bit about Divine Murder?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we always market ourselves as symphonic power metal. So we're all big fans of we're all prog heads. So we definitely love the prog influence, but a lot of us are Symphony X and Dream Theater and Rush fans.
Right
But
on.
we're actually closer, like in our sound, probably to Nightwish and Camelot. Actually, I have a Camelot shirt, so I love the
Nice.
band. If you haven't checked out Camelot, please check out Camelot. Buy their albums. They're an amazing band. We love them as well. Yeah, probably a combination. We've got definitely some Symphony X influence, a lot of Nightwish, a lot of Xandria, a little bit of Delane, maybe some Camelot. We just like Camelot. I don't know if we have too much of their sound, but it's definitely the melodic power metal with a lot of orchestration is basically kind of what we do.
So I don't profess to be a knower of all in that genre, but one of the things that I do know is as I've watched some things on places like blabbermouth.net and things that have been shared with me in Europe, that seems to be one of the biggest, if not the biggest, forms of music, in particular hard music, on the planet right
Absolutely.
now over there. That's a fair statement?
Yeah, it's definitely a fair statement, especially if you go and hang out in northern Germany at a small festival called Wacken. You're going to see these bands just draw 80,000, maybe 100,000. I'm not sure how many they hold, but it's a lot of people, and definitely one of our favorite concerts to watch just online. We couldn't get tickets, obviously. Was the Wacken when Nightwish was headlining. So that was what 2012, 2013, something like that. Amazing concert. So yeah, absolutely.
So here's what I like about that genre of music. And again, I don't profess to be an expert, but there is a show quality to it as well as a musical component to it, which I always grew up on the theatrical side of things. I like, the Alice Coopers, obviously Kiss is my favorite band, Twisted
Yeah.
Sister. I like bands that were also Iron Maiden, a show as well as, you know, powerful music.
Yeah.
That genre to me has that. Like, so it's you have the symphonic nature, but it almost, the only way I can describe it is, as cheesy as sounds, symphony done to metal. And
Yeah,
it just seems to
exactly.
mesh perfectly, right?
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
so talk a little bit about your band and where you see yourselves in the world and how you fit in there.
Yeah, we're our genre, I mean, yeah, we're symphonic metal, but we also definitely push a positive message. We're also a faith-based band. So some people don't really, they're like, how does that work out? And it's like at the end of the day, I can always give you a punchline. It's basically I want whoever the listener is, I want to encourage them at the end of the day because there's a lot of people who are going through a lot of things right now. It's one of those, we do see what you're going through. We're trying to give you a word of
Yeah.
encouragement. So it's like we're the big encouragement band. We're cheering you on whether you know us or not. And it's cool because we never know who's listening. Next thing we know, we get a message and we release a song, and I think the latest one. Well, it's not the latest one, but we got one out of it was out of Oklahoma just randomly. Said, hey, I just stumbled across your music and I needed this right at this time because I was considering, I think they were just going to shoot up. They weren't going to do anything like too drastic, but they're like, you know what? I decided not to and give it another day of sobriety. And I said, perfect. That's what we're here for. We gave you a word of encouragement to continue on, and we're trying to get those seeds planted to where it's obviously the music. We love the music, but the music's also a carrier for encouragement. If no one's had encouragement today, we'll be the ones to encourage you, and that's the idea. So that's a very
Yeah.
quick spiel.
And well, no, and apropos, and to me, I mean, that music, I mean, even if some bands that are doing that genre are having some darker or negative sort of images in their lyrics, it's pretty hard to feel down when you're listening to it. That's just
Yep.
my experience with it. Obviously the musicianship is great, as a drummer, all kinds of chops and stuff. When I like the stuff that I've played in the past had a lot of chops, but it was more you kind of had to groove down every now and again. You didn't get a chance to maybe overplay or do more. But this
Yeah.
music, there really is no overplaying because it's really parts and compositions and things like that.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm just the orchestral rhythm section, if you will, because at the end of the day, I've got to keep the foundation going. I don't want to get too much in the way. We're not quite going into a full fusion jam, and we're not quite going into a full prog jam.
Right.
So at the end of the day, yeah, it's basically the part that fits the song. So
So I'm up here in Halifax, Nova Scotia, and which is east coast of Canada. And back in the '90s,
mhm.
the Seattle thing happened. Sub Pop Records was signing up the Nirvanas and all these guys, and then they ran out of bands. And for some reason, well, I think what it was is one of their executives came to Halifax, saw
Mhm.
some bands, they started signing bands here.
Yeah,
The Halifax became this really, really cool city that was very nice and upbeat, and all of a sudden, everybody hated life and they wanted to write about, drab
Y-
circumstances.
yeah,
Um, and obviously we know that that's pretty much how the rest of the '90s went, right? Um,
yeah.
where do you think this genre of music really started gaining its legs? I mean, it's probably been around. I think of Swedish bands that were kind of doing it in the late '70s and early '80s in different ways, but where do you really think it started gaining ground?
I honestly think we're right at the turn of the century. We've had definitely, to your point, bands that have done this before. You can see elements of it all the way back well into the '80s and the '70s, like you said. I think what it was is you saw an emergence at the time. You saw Within Temptation start to gain ground in early 2000s. You saw Evanescence here in the States start to gain ground in the early 2000s. And that's not quite symphonic metal. They're more symphonic alt alternative
Right.
heavy, something like that. And then Nightwish started taking off, and it's like you started hearing these elements in radio. I'm going to say radio chart topping bands. And then since then, there's been a ton of bands that have been influenced mostly by Nightwish. Honestly, I'm going to think Nightwish is probably the biggest one. So I'm going to say around 2000, 2001 is when it really started to emerge and take off. Just my perception. Now, as far as when it started, your guess is as good as mine. I would agree with '70s and '80s, but as far as worldwide, I'm going to say notoriety and popularity, probably early 2000s.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can trace some of it back to Deep Purple in the
Oh yeah,
'70s for sure with the Hammond organ and Yngwie Malmsteen in the '80s and stuff with the sort of the same thing. But one thing that comes to mind for me for this genre, and we'll get on to you guys specifically in a second,
yeah,
is kind of a Scandinavian influence, like it's from
hmm
that part of the world, right? Like because a lot of the people that I know that are over there talk about growing up and being weaned on Bach and Chopin and things like that, and
oh yeah,
Richie Blackmore talked about it, Yngwie Malmsteen talked about it. Then it became almost like, okay, well, you got to do it or you're not sounding cool as a guitar player. But bands as a band kind of came in and put those influences all into a blender and came out with this. That's my impression of it, and I think that part of the world maybe is who we thank for it. Is that a fair statement?
that's definitely a fair statement. Yeah, this is definitely a snapshot of Scandinavia. So
So Divine Martyr, you guys have been together how long?
we started unofficially in 2016. 2017 is when we actually started to release music. So yeah, it's what year are we in? Yeah, it's 2024. So yeah, we're moving along. We're, I guess, seventh official year, technically eight. The first year it was basically we were getting feelers out to anybody that would want to try forming the band, try the genre, but we weren't actively practicing or anything. It was basically a build year, and that's all we did. So yeah, we'll say 7 years. So.
And so your fair city of Indianapolis, which I've been to a number of times. Um, what is the scene like there, and what is the scene like for you and as a band, and how do you guys have to branch out and kind of take the show on the road, or are you able to kind of win the hearts and minds of people in your hometown?
We're working on that. I'm a big by trade. I'm a big stats guy. I work in quality. So what I actually am doing is I run a pretty hard. I'm going to say campaign, but we're trying. We actually are finding our people. We do have people in indie, small pockets of people that do like the genre. We actually are getting honestly online presence a lot more in surprisingly like Detroit area and as well as like the Cleveland Akron area. We're getting some people who are chiming in, and then we'll have random people show up. Like we have a one of our top fans who's an amazing guy, comes out of Louisville, so we'll have people show up from random locations. But yeah, I think right now the fair statement, I think our largest city just by stats is Indianapolis. But we're the areas that are growing fastest are Cleveland, Akron. I didn't know they had such a big scene, and it's overwhelming in a good way. Just they blew me away. Chicago is growing, Cincinnati is growing. So these are we're seeing elements in those cities of some definite interest and people online presence and so forth. So yeah. So to answer your question, yeah, Indy has a fair scene. There's a few people that really like the genres here, the of symphonic metal, and but we're seeing I'm going to say more probably actually in Ohio and a little bit in Michigan. So
Well, you mentioned you're a Rush fan, and if you're a Rush fan, you know the story that they basically did okay in Toronto where they were from, but got broken out of Cleveland, of all places,
exactly, yeah,
right? And it's one of those things. I deal with it myself. I mean, like I too love analytics. I never used to be that way, but I started getting into them, and it's very interesting to see where your audience comes from. And when
oh yeah,
when you deep dive and figure out why, most times. It's easy as or what it's as simple as the nose on your face, as they say, but you don't really
yeah,
see it until you dive into those types of things, right?
yeah, exactly, yeah. Yeah, because so like U.S. side, our largest area of new growth is Cleveland, Akron, Canton, and then I even include Youngstown. So that whole area is just exploding for us. So yeah, that area, and if and yeah, you're right, Rush did take off there, so I shouldn't be surprised. But it's yeah, that area it's just been I'm going to say overwhelmingly in a good way. So
No,
great
and like
people.
it is cool to look at these things because I mean, like myself, I mean, I've got a big following in Phoenix, Arizona, and Los Angeles, and
Hmm.
New York, and overseas, and my following here, hometown, it's like, yeah, it's pretty good, but it's um, there is this thing that's unfortunate that you have to make it elsewhere before your own hometown embraces you, and it's just, I
It
guess,
is, yeah,
a sad, and I don't say a sad fact like boohoo. It's a sad
yeah,
fact on people that they don't support, their own hometown a little bit more.
yeah. Yeah, it's like there's a quote. It's like the teacher has no honor in his hometown. It's
Yep.
from years ago. But yeah, yeah, exactly to what you said. So yeah,
So you said you started making music in 2017,
yep,
and I always like to do this.
hmm
You gave me a little bit of a comparable in terms of what you sound like and who you are. Has the music stayed in that vein the whole time, or have you deviated and kind of done different things and or have you expanded the same sound in a bigger way?
Uh, one thing we do is like we'll have many ideas. I'll do a lot of the writing. Jason will do a lot of the writing, and we'll see, and we'll honestly see where a lot of the ideas go to. The short answer is we try not to pigeonhole ourselves into just being another Nightwish sounding band because we have a
Right.
lot of influences that aren't Nightwish. So the latest song, Absolution, definitely sounds like Imaginarium era Nightwish. We've got a few songs that are being recorded right now that I finished parts on. Some sound like Rush. Some sound like Evanescence. One we just recorded actually also sounds like a Nightwish song. So we've got some other stuff as well. But some of our earliest songs, they sounded more like Camelot than they did Nightwish. So more like just standard power metal than symphonic power metal. So yeah, we definitely branched through. And we have one song that's completely out of our typical subgenre, or to Shatter the Doubt, where we did a nod to a lot of the prog greats out there. It sounds like early era Dream Theater, honestly, because it's got that many time signature changes. And it sounds like something Dream Theater would have done in the '90s. So we definitely branch out. I think we try to stay within just the symphonic and power metal genre, and we move around those areas. But it's basically, the short answer is whatever we're inspired to do, we kind of move in that direction, at least
Yeah,
for
and
right now.
I think comparables, regardless of how hard you try, are going to be hard because everybody's going to glean their own sort of thing from it, regardless of what you think or what you're trying to do. Look at it this way: there was a lot of double kick shuffle done before Alex Van Halen.
Yeah,
However, everybody just here's one of those, and it's like, oh, that sounds like I'm the one, or an Alex
yep,
Van Halen sort of deal, right? So, I say embrace it, and what people get out of it, they get out of it because all you really want to do is have them hear it,
yeah, absolutely.
right? So what do you 2024? I can't believe, I was one of those guys on January 1st after I played New Year's Eve. I threw a stake in the ground and I went live and I said, you know what, this is going to be the best year ever. And
Yeah,
there's been hints of it. But 2024 has been up and down for me personally, but that's fine. It's all learning and whatever. It's almost done. Do you guys have anything on the go left in 2024, or is your focus on 2025?
our biggest focus right now is honestly just getting material done. There's one of our fans posted on YouTube, and he basically said, "Man, I've been waiting for an actual album from you guys since 2018." And I'm like, you were right. We've been releasing singles, putting a compilation together, but we haven't released a full album. Rather than just a string of singles and a short string of compilations. So that's
Right.
our biggest thing is to actually just do the full album for the basically the rest of the year. So we're recording kind of at a slow pace, but we're wrapping up basically the album. We're going to try to have it done through the end of the year, and then we're also at the beginning of 2025. That's our goal.
So I love that the whole I guess Indianapolis is considered the Midwest, kind of in that Chicago, Cleveland, that area. Indianapolis is also known for some interesting music things. Did you know that?
Some and not as much as I probably should. I do know there was a few just origin blues artists that came out of Indy. I didn't know they were based out of Indy, and they were at least regionally very successful, if not national. But other than that, no. What do you have?
Well, two really interesting things. One was an almost, and it ended up didn't become one. But Randy Rhoads' almost last show was in Indianapolis. It wound up being, I believe, in Huntsville, Alabama.
Oh yeah,
Which is I didn't know that. Somebody gave me that. But the last show that Elvis Presley ever did in his life was in Indianapolis.
really?
Um, yeah. So anybody that's an Elvis fan, we checked that box. Thank you. And cards and letters.
Yeah.
Um, so how do you guys record your part? Christina sent me. There's intricacies. There's simplicity. There's difficult parts. There's all kinds of different things. How do you record your songs when you do them?
Okay, yeah. So what usually happens is I can walk you through the whole process. Is I also play the
Yeah.
keyboard parts. So I'm also a keyboardist. So I actually start, and what I do is I'll write a very simplistic version of kind of the flow of the song idea, and it's almost like listening to a video game from the late '90s, almost 8-bit Nintendo, in some cases. But we'll kind of we'll put this through to get a flow direction. I'll start putting orchestration on top of that, and I'll send it to the guitar players. They'll go over it and they'll start writing parts. We'll send it to Olivia, our vocalist, and she'll go over it. She'll start brainstorming parts. What I'll do then is basically write a quick reduction. So it's not a finished product, but it's the next level of basically synth based orchestration. And I'll track the drum parts to those. I'll actually go into a recording studio and just track the parts on my own, and usually do 3, 4, maybe more songs at once. Uh, and then from there, I send it to the guitar players, and they'll start putting their parts to it. And then we'll have Olivia come in and do a sweep. She'll go into the studio and do either a cello part or her vocal parts, and if she's adding cello to it. Then at the very end, I'll actually go in with final orchestration more as a producer, and come in either with a triggered sound library through Miroslav, or one of the I'm looking at East West, some of their stuff as well. But pretty much has been like Miroslav orchestration, and they're playing the actual orchestral parts, and then we'll send them off usually we'll have all the parts together. We'll have our stems done, and we'll send them over once the edits are done over for final mixing. Usually to actually a guy lately, it's a guy in Sweden who's a phenomenal engineer. So we'll send parts to him. He has them mixed probably about 72 hours, and then the song's back, and then we send it to master once it's approved. So that's kind of how we do our recording process. Is basically each person does their own. So we're not really recording it live. And we just do our parts at a time, put them together, and then get the final mix. And that's how we've been running the recording process.
So from that depiction, not knowing anything, if I didn't know anything else about the band, I'd say that's a studio creation.
Yeah.
Now you guys take this out and play it.
Yep.
And when
yeah,
you
absolutely.
play it, are you heavy on tracks?
Yeah. So what we do is the only parts that are on tracks, people ask about that. It's the orchestration. So the guitar parts are live. Cello is live. Drums are obviously live. Bass is live. Vocals are live, and then we have backing vocals. So the only parts that are coming through as part of backing tracks would be the orchestration parts, and that I'll really actually go back in and make sure that it's just the orchestration parts to be as live as we can. Until we get to a point where maybe we can bring in 20 or 30 people to actually play the live tracks. So we would need at least 20 people to play the parts because there's a lot in there. So
and a big budget, and
yeah,
why do that when you can have tracks? I will tell you, and it's really funny because backing tracks, my podcast has been featured on Blabbermouth no less than 19 times. And typically it gets picked up when the subject of backing tracks comes up, which became a very popular big ones or back tracks and tuning down for the singer if you're following along. And I even had the one and only Mr. Eddie Trunk weigh in twice on some of my stuff because he goes absolutely ballistic over backing tracks, right? I contend as a drummer, it's a skill set to be able to play on to backing tracks. And as another drummer, it's not going to be me yammering on about this because people roll their eyes when I start saying it. I'm going to say, Mark, over to you, sir, and either back me up or tell me that I'm full of crap.
It takes a little bit of work to not play sterile with backing tracks. I'll tell you that right now. So obviously we can lock in with the click, but at the end of the day, you also want to put on a good show, and you also want to have a good sound coming out of the kit. So yeah, it's a challenge because you're not just playing drum karaoke, you're playing a performance with a click, and you have to sell the part. So it's got to sound just as good, if not better, than the studio. So it's definitely a skill set. So.
Drum karaoke, I like that line. If that ever gets to be big, I could owe you some sort of royalties because I bet you I'm going to use that to death over the coming months.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
Well, it's just a common thing, and it comes down to when people want to fight against backing tracks, it's like you're doing something dishonorable if you're using backing tracks. And I contend I would rather hear a band sound amazing than somebody trying to prove they can do it live and sucking. And that's just how I feel about it.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I mean, because if you want the big cheat code, I can tell you for a fact, like, what's Rush doing? Those are MIDI controls. It's technically not backing tracks, but they're triggering samples. If you watch what they're doing, what's Nightwish doing? Well, Thomas is playing the parts, but I guarantee you he's triggering tracks as well. So that's going on because you can hear it live. You don't hear an 80-piece orchestra out of one person. So that's going on. And I think definitely some of the other bands, I'm trying to remember, I think Camelot did a little bit as well. I'm not 100% sure. When I saw them live in Chicago, the mix was good enough that I couldn't tell because it was so far in the back. I'm like, it might have been. But, a lot of bands are using it. So
well, I mean, and there's certain things like when you see a band and, a drummer steps back and the drums are still going, or I mean, that's one thing. That's just, we won't comment any further on that. We've all seen the video, but enhancements are fine. I guess, but my point to some people is, I guess the only thing that will make it right for you guys is us paying an orchestra $50,000 more than we're going to make, and that that's honest and easy peasy. So yeah, to me, it's just such a ridiculous topic. I just think the better it sounds, the better, and if it involves tracks, and I'll say my fellow drummers know this. It's not simple. Once you get the hang of it, it's great, but it takes you a while to get there, and it's not a big deal. Last question, sir. Where are my viewers / listeners going to find out about you guys, how they get your music, see your videos, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first place I'll send you is the band website. So it's divinemartyr.com. So definitely check that. That's the main website. We also are on Facebook, so on the Meta World. So we have facebook.com/Divine Martyr. We just put our Twitter/X, whatever it's called nowadays, back up, and you can find us on there. I believe it's just do @divine_martyr. Should show up on there. And we're building some other platforms. And the reason we're branching out is basically if one platform goes down or one platform doesn't like us for some reason, we want to have a backup. So that's our social media handles. Then find us on YouTube. We're on YouTube. We're on Pandora, Deezer, Spotify. We're even on Django Radio. So we're all those places. So you can find us on Spotify. Give us a listen if you like us. Great. Say hi. YouTube, if you stop in, check out our videos, leave us a comment. We love hearing from people, even if it's just like, hey, you guys are cool, or you guys are, hey, what's up, guys? We're like, yeah, we love talking to people. Send a message, say hi. So
I
there you
I
go.
didn't ask. I didn't ask. Are you guys with the label?
We are not. We're actually indie. At the moment with our model, it's with where we're at right now, it's actually not smart yet to do a label, at least for us. It may change, but right now we're just running under an independent, completely indie. So
Nothing wrong with that. And the way the world is right now, it sometimes is a lot better because it's easier to maneuver. It's easier to keep your vision the way you want it to have it. It's easier to do things the way you want to in your vision, and it's all good. So, Mark, I want to thank you for doing this, my friend.
absolutely. Thank you for having me on here.
And enjoy your night. We're back on Rock Rage Radio after this.